Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider here. Welcome to my review for Kamen Rider Revice episode 12. And this was the big official debut of Sakura as a rider. Kamen Rider Jeanne? Bone? I thought it was pronounced Jeanne just from the way it looks. And then someone said it was pronounced John. But then the driver sounded like it said Jeanne. It's hard to tell because the rider belts just won't shut up and they stop singing. So I couldn't make it out. I'm going to call it Jeanne just for a little while because it makes me think of Jean Belcher, but it's somewhere in between those. It doesn't really matter. But this was her big debut after her false start Henshin and no-go last week, and I thought it was a really strong debut and yet another strong episode of Revice. If you remember where we left off, she couldn't transform, and then Iki had to get in her way to protect her from being hit, and so he got hurt. And we kind of open up on a funny note of that, where Vice is like, "Oh my god, Iki's dead!" He's like, "No, I'm not, you idiot, I'm still here," which was just kind of funny. And then him and Daiji think that they defeat the dead man's, but then it doesn't work, and the stamp disintegrates, and they realize how things are working differently with this guy. And then after that, they're kind of, reading Sakura the Riot Act about how she put herself in danger, and, she put them in danger because, they had to protect her, and they're just kind of upset with her in general. And she runs off. Before that happens, we start foreshadowing her inner demon, which comes into play a little bit later. And then we kind of have a lot of discussion about the villains. Back at Phoenix, they're discussing it, and George is like, "Oh, I don't know what happened. I thought that driver got junked." You gotta junk it! I don't know whether he's telling the truth or not because he's so suspicious. I assumed the driver came from the dead man's because they're trying so hard to manipulate her, but I'm not sure. But I'm fairly certain there's a good chance he's involved. He actually almost seemed to be telling the truth just because I didn't detect any sly looks unless I just missed it. But they kind of wave it off for now, the new driver, by saying we need to focus on this new dead man because he works differently than the others. We have this new villain guy and he's like, "Well, why don't I just become the new Gift Sama?" And they're like, "No, it's Jif Sama." But it's kind of interesting. Like, he works differently because he can kind of mass produce demons. I like that it created a different challenge. I also like that this guy isn't just here for a one-off story, and he seems to be at least a new reoccurring villain, and it's kind of interesting the way he works. And he brought some interesting interplay to the villains and some interesting different goals there. And it just kind of was a nice change of pace. Like, not that we're too long into the series where we've had too many repetitive things, but I like that this whole arc and the way everything was handled about it was different. And then we started getting to the meat and potatoes of Sakura's arc to overcome her fears to become a rider. And Iki gets some good insight from his parents at lunch, especially the mom who's talking about how, your sister always puts on a good front, but she's got these anxieties and these fears underneath. And it kind of reminded me of the conversation she had with Daiji about Iki, about the front that he puts up. I thought there was a nice parallel there, but it kind of gets him to think about the understanding of her a little bit more. And he goes to see her, and he talks to her like in this playground area, which was from the flashback when she said she wanted to be the strongest. And she's like, "You're not going to talk me out of it." He's like, "I'm not here to talk you out of it. I'm here to tell you not to half-ass it. Never half-ass two things. Whole-ass one thing. Ron Swanson." And then he walks off. But basically he tells her, basically sets her up to overcome her fears and commit and stop putting on a front of being strong and actually be strong. And then we have a fight going on while she's, getting ready to motivate herself. And there's kind of an interesting little tidbit scene with Demons and Live where Demons talks about how he became a rider because when he was younger and he was like bullied or whatever, he was always waiting for a hero to come and a hero never came. So I guess he wants to be that hero to people so that a hero will be there for people like he wasn't. And it was a nice little scene, actually, giving him a little bit of character, but it just seemed so random in this middle of this episode, all of a sudden having this character motivation talk. But basically, while the fight's going on, Sakura's trying to henshin, and it's not working. And it's basically about her shedding, and not shedding, but accepting her weaknesses, and to a degree using that to shed it and become strong. And then we kind of end the scene before she shows up on her demon more fully manifesting. And then she shows up at the fight after that, and she transforms, and we get our first tension into Kamen Rider Jeanne Belcher. And I like the suit a little bit more now in action. I think it's still my least favorite suit. There's still just something so flat about the two colors together, but I like it a little bit more in motion, and I still think it's a strong suit. And I mentioned how it looked like Ghost to me, and I'm thinking back on it, I wonder if that was intentional because of the anniversary stuff, but I'm not sure. But it does look like a suit that would fit in with Kamen Rider Ghost. I'm not a fan of the driver, however. I think it's really ugly and clunky. I think for the most part, the two drivers we've gotten so far, or three, have been pretty solid. And especially I really like Live and Evil's driver and the way it works. But this one is just so ugly, and I hate how so many of the modern rider belts are just a clunk fest. And, this is a clunk fest even before they add in any power-up things. And, the jingle's fine. I still wish they would dial back the sing-songiness in general. During the fight, we find out her demon manifests a little bit different. It manifests as effectively the way she used to be, and it manifests as her inner weaknesses, and it basically needs to be protected, and it's this cute little Barney-looking thing. this is actually how the Dawn Brother Sentai is going to look. After she saves the day, she kind of has a stare-off with the villain guy, and I guess she remembers him as the Doctor, and I like that they're setting up a little bit of a rivalry or something there. It's kind of nice. And then we end up in the episode on the three siblings vowing to work together, and then Vice worrying that this new cutesy demon is going to steal the spotlight. And overall, yeah, this was a good episode. I thought it was a strong debut for her. I like that we built towards it. I still wish that Rider in general wasn't back-to-backing intros. Like, we're already going to get a major power-up again next week. It's like, dude, just settle down. Like, again, I said this in the previous videos. I think Revice is actually doing a remarkably good job, better than most series, at the pacing and making it feel right storyline-wise, but I just wish the franchise in general would slow it down. I mean, who am I to say? Obviously, they know what they're doing over there in Japan. It's working for them. But I firmly believe that they could calibrate things a little bit with the toy schedule and not back-to-back the debuts and front-end the show with it, and they could still be successful. So it just bothers me on a conceptual level. What I liked back when I got into Toku is when you'd introduce something big, you'd have like a few episodes then to enjoy that now being a part of the status quo before the next big thing arrived, and I feel like I don't get a minute to breathe with all this stuff. But a little mini rant there about that again, and just I had to bring that up. But other than that, again, setting that aside, I think Revice does a good job with the pacing. Again, setting that aside, I think Revice does a good job with the pacing. Like, we did a good job, like, teasing and leading into Sakura becoming a rider, and then we had these 2 episodes to really give her a good character arc to become a rider. And I also really like the way her inner demon works differently, and I like the way it sets up all 3 siblings having a different way that they interacted with their inner demon. You know, Revi and Vice is kind of like the default, for lack of a better word, of just these 2 working together, and I guess Vice represents aspects of his personality he doesn't show. And then you had, you know, his brother struggling with secrets he was keeping hidden, so it resulted in the demon possessing him and coming out as his darker side, kind of a Jekyll Hyde thing. And then for the sister, it was about overcoming a weakness, and her inner demons was her weakness she had to accept, and it manifests as a part of her that she's trying to overcome. And I thought that's not only interesting, but I like how all 3 of them have different relationships. And if all the family becomes writers, I'd be curious to see how that works. I don't think all the family will become writers, but when we get more writers, if they do work the same way with an inner demon, I'd love to see some different ways they could bring that about. I guess demons, oddly enough, Demon doesn't have one that works that way. I really like that about it. I like sort of the interesting dynamics in the villains in this episode. It was a bit of a weird out-of-place scene, but I liked the little bit about Demon's motivation in this episode. It was just all around a solid episode. I would give it a 4. Just a really good, solid introduction to a new writer, while also giving us some good character moments and some good fleshing out of some lore a little bit, which I thought was nice. But what did you guys think of the debut of our new female writer? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, before I comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so notifications for my videos. Awesome Rider, signing out.